And 3, 2, 1, let's go. You're on.
Hi, folks. Welcome to our, it's our second live for the 2023 season in support of our Purple Heart Project, where we bring combat wounded veterans in 6 times a year, starting in April, and treat them to a 6-day class. Cover their airfare, their hotel, their meals, send each vet home with about $4,000 worth of Each one of those vets will have a workbench built to our specs by a civilian volunteer and delivered to their home, so they can continue to do this. We've got lots of people on tonight in support. I'll mention it as we go a little bit further. Frick, have you got a question?
I do, yep.
So I'm here for 2 hours to answer questions best I can. You're here to benefit from it, and if you would like to be a part of our Purple Heart Project and want to donate, you're welcome to do that. We are now a registered 501c3 in the United States, so your donation can be a tax deduction. We're working on the same situation for Canada, although it's not complete yet. Go ahead, Frick.
All right, Todd Michael in Leaksdale, Ontario.
I didn't hear his first name.
Todd Michael.
Hi, Todd.
I'd
Where in Ontario?
Leaksdale?
I don't know that place. I thought I knew Ontario quite well.
I'd like to hear Rob's opinion on the use of magnetic dovetail sawing jigs.
Whoa. Well, where are you going, Jake?
Not centered anymore.
Okay, say this nicely. I have had students in their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and in their 90s. And these guys have learned to cut dovetails the old-fashioned way, which was a saw. And the only jig was 5 fingers on each side, and some of them didn't have all 5 fingers. So it can be done. Now this is this comes off as a sales pitch, but you can just filter through it the best you can. Your saw is 70% of your ability to do the joint. And what I mean by that is your dovetail saw is supposed to be able to give you a surface. I'm just looking to see if I have a piece of wood that I can, is that plywood? It is. Your saw should give you a jointable surface. So I'm going to take this piece of 11/16" thick pine. You could do it with hardwood. I just happen to have this. Take my dovetail saw. If your saw will cut straight, straight is defined as the shortest distance between 2 points, has nothing to do with angle. That's the part, that's where the skill comes in. If your saw will cut straight on its own, that means once you start to cut, because this set is so narrow, the saw can't wander to the left or to the right because there's no slop in the kerf. So if I set that down in there, there's no wiggle room. That means the saw continues on that path as long as you're not doing anything with your hand to overpower it. So what I do with my hand is I simply push the saw and pull it back, push it, pull it back. Very, very light grip. Now I cut down the full depth, which is 1 inch and 5/8. Then I'll come in and I'll cut this piece off. Now here's the reason why I say the saw is 70% of your ability to make the cut. If your saw cuts laser straight and the set is such that it's a nice smooth cut, what you end up with is a 2 surfaces that literally, when you put them together, am I close enough? Is that autofocus?
Yeah, that's good right there.
Right? You can't see the joint. So that surface is smooth and flat. This surface is smooth and flat. So when you saw the side of a pin and saw the side of a tail and you put them together and you get a perfect glue joint, you don't have to do anything more to it. Most saws don't do that. They're wiggly. And when they're wiggly, it leaves you having to go in and correct the surface with a chisel. And for most people, that is beyond their skill, at least in the beginning phase, and it's not going to work. So if your saw can do that, it eliminates huge amounts of work. So then all you've got to be able to do is just do the paint by number, the layout, the execution of the tails, the transfer, the execution of the pins, and you assemble it. There's some chisel work involved. That's why I only said 70%, not 100. The other part is this. After you've laid out your joint, you now have to have the control or the ability to literally start your saw where you intend to. So on my saw, the first 2 inches have little wee tiny teeth that are filed so that the cutting face is leaning back like this. If it's 0 degrees or leaning forward, it's extremely aggressive. It'll cut really fast, but it's difficult to start. If you lay it back, then the teeth literally slide over the wood, so there's no grabbing. And that's enough just to get a little fingernail of a slot that will hold the saw in line so that when the big teeth hit it, in comes the speed. And there's where you get your precision. So, do I need a jig to do that? No. Yes, you need to learn how to follow a line, but really that's not that difficult. I see the line, I put the saw on it. As long as I know how to hold the saw, I should be able to cut to the line. Takes a little bit of practice. Yeah, on dovetail day, 14 students in the class. Somewhere in the first 4 to 6 hours, everybody figures that out and they're able to do it so that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cuts are made square. The angle, well, that comes quicker for some than others, but that doesn't even matter. If one side of one tail is 12 degrees and one's 6 and one's 9, they're all over the place. It doesn't matter because this is the template. You just have to make sure the second piece fits it, and the angles don't play a role in there at all. Of course, what is going to play a role is how well it looks, but you can alter that by, you get him out of the chair. You can alter that by learning to get the angles just right. So I don't use and I don't encourage any kind of a guide for your saw. The only guide you need is this one, or this if you're left-handed, and a good saw. I make a good saw. Ken makes a good saw. Ian makes all of our saws now, actually. So that's my answer for that. Frick, read me the question again to make sure that I addressed it. I tend to wander.
I'd like to hear Rob's opinion on the use of magnetic dovetail sawing jigs.
Yeah. Yeah. No go. You can do it without it. Okay, next question.
Dave in Spring Hill, Nova Scotia.
Hey, Dave. We're getting a full range of Canadians tonight. What did you say? We're competing with Royal Rumble?
I think the wrestling event's on tonight. That's what I heard anyway. But it's not till later, so they have plenty of time.
Smile, Moose. You're looking right into the camera. Don't tell them. Haven't been here in a while.
Up close and personal.
We'll have to have a special introduction. What is it, Frick?
Dave in Spring Hill, Nova Scotia says,
Not far away.
planing matching glue surfaces provides a tight fit, but I have read that roughing the surfaces slightly allows the glue to grip better. Is this true?
Not with my experience. I don't know where that ever came, where that idea ever grew legs. Smoother, as long as it's making contact. I certainly wouldn't rough anything up. I would much rather be gluing 2 pieces that have been hand planed than 2 pieces that have been sanded. Although I've never tested it, so that might actually be an interesting, you know what? If Luther's listening, that should be an interesting test we'll do. Try gluing up a piece coming off the joiner, a piece coming off the hand plane, and a piece that is sanded, and see what kind of glue strength we get. Thanks for the suggestion. Next one, Frick.
Kevin Rote in Florida.
Hey, Kevin.
What is the correct angle to hold your burnisher when putting burr on a card scraper?
Yeah, it just depends. You don't want to be too extreme. And the more of an angle, so if you're, rather than use my hands, let me show you. if you're using a chisel, so there's the edge of your scraper. That would be 0 degrees or 90, whichever way you're looking at it.
Can you get a little closer? We can't see that.
Oh, you can't? Now?
Yep.
So I would say you're probably going to be right about there. You get down here too much and you're going to roll that right around. It's going to be, you won't even be able to pick up a shaving. So play around with it. Depending on how aggressive you want it to be. So I would say you're anywhere between maybe 5 degrees and at the most 10. That's really something you just have to play with and you'll find out. So I'll give you a tip. So what I do is I put the scraper in my vise. Now I have some blocks of wood that I made up. Finding them would be a I was actually going to clean up today in preparation for this, but I got into making boxes. Somewhere I took a piece of pine and I cut a little rabbit on one side. Here it is right here. So if you can see that, this side has got a rabbit that goes up 1 inch. This side's got one that goes up 7/8 of an inch. And I took my scraper blade like this, set it in here, and then clamped it in place. Now when I remove that, this is parallel to the bench top. And then I use, as a scraper tool, I find the back of a chisel. I've already prepared it in terms of its nice polish. Take a piece of this yellow tape that we sell because it's so good and has so many uses. Thanks to Ken's son for introducing it to us. Put a piece of tape around there just to keep your hands away from that sharp edge. And when you set it on there like that, that's going to maintain the angle so you can go forward and back. If you want to increase, then I've got one that I made, I cut 1.125", so that's going to raise the block up, the blade up a little bit, which means it's going to put more of an angle on this piece of steel, and that'll give you a little more aggressive hook. Next, Frick.
Can you mention the auction so we can start it
Yes. Oh, good. So, how many people do we have on? Who are we talking to?
early? We have 387 right now.
Okay. I assume everybody, I guess I can't assume. So we started the Purple Heart Project back in 2016. And it was a result of Jesse Paradas, that's his flag and his medals and patches over there in the corner, contacted me through email wanting to buy one of our saws. Couldn't afford a new one, living on a military pension as a combat wounded Marine, but ever since he got involved in hand tool woodworking, it was the first time he found any peace from the physical and the mental pain he suffers from. That resonated with me because I had been teaching 50-year-old business executives, which would be my typical customer coming to a workshop, and I would watch them deflate over 5 days to where they'd go from being tight as a drum from stress on Monday, and they would leave on Friday like a jellyfish. So we reached out, we put it on social media. Our next class we taught, which was in November of 2016, we had 6 paying students and 7 combat wounded veterans that had spoke up, so we brought them in. Anyway, this has started the Purple Heart Project. So we just recently, in October, we had our 20th class. A lot of these vets I continue to work with. One of them fell into a situation where he just life happens, right? And he had some equipment he needed to sell. He needed to raise some money right away. So I called Mattress Doug. Doug owns a mattress factory in, not Des Moines. Tell me the name of the place.
Dubuque.
Dubuque?
Yeah.
What state?
Iowa.
Iowa. And I knew Doug because he had come to the class. I said, Doug, do you know anybody that needs a a shopsmith, a saw stop, a jointer, and a 20-inch thickness planer? I told him the situation. Well, Doug wrote a check out to this vet for the price that the vet wanted. solved that problem instantly. And then he contacted me and said, Rob, I'm just going to give you the equipment. You auction it off and use it as a fundraiser for the Purple Heart. Well, that just speaks volumes about Doug. I could tell you lots more about him. That's just the type of guy that he is. So it's not easy to handle this, and we tried a few different ways. Luther finally working with, I don't know who's, I think, was Jeff helping Luther? Somebody was helping Luther. They managed to figure out how to do it, so it's on eBay. It ends tonight, just after our live, and the funds raised will go directly to the Purple Heart Project. The equipment will ship from New Hampshire, where it is. Pictures are on there. So it's the top model of the saw stop. All of this equipment was bought new in 2020, so it's had very little use. So it's the saw stop, the industrial version, and if you know actually they made some changes over the years, but used to be the professional. Now it's the industrial is the biggest machine they make. It's a 3 horsepower single phase, has 52 inches to the right of the blade, so lots of capacity. And there's a special, I can't remember the brand name, miter gauge that comes with it, aftermarket. There's a Grizzly 8-inch jointer with a helical head, right? No, straight knife. Straight knife on the jointer. And there's a Powermatic 20-inch thickness planer that has a helical head. And that's, they're all single-phase power. What's the horsepower on the, is it 3 or 5?
On the joiner?
Yeah, no, on the thickness planer.
I would hope it's a 5.
It's a 5, yep.
5 horsepower. So you can see the pictures. The stuff's been well taken care of. Frick, can you give us an update on where they...
Yep, so I'm going to keep the prices, current prices up on the top left corner of the screen. The planer's currently at $45.50, saw stop's at $3,400, and the joiner's at $1,625. And Luther, $1,675, sorry. And Luther's posting the link, so you guys can bid on that.
Okay,
A
and
couple hours left.
what? Just so they know, what about shipping? How is that being handled?
So the way that Luther put it on here is, let me just see. If you cannot do a local pickup, we will be giving 5 days post sale coordination time. We will drive the planer to Manchester, New Hampshire at no additional charge. Deliver it to a freight shipping terminal in Manchester, New Hampshire. You would be responsible for coordinating and paying for the receiving, palletizing, shipping, and the shipment with the freight shipping company.
Okay.
So Luther, who created the Purple Heart Project eBay account, would probably be receiving that information.
Okay. So if you want to donate and help the Purple Heart Project and actually pick up some equipment at the same time, here's a great way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So if you are a combat wounded vet that has been to one of our class, I think we've had I don't know if my count's accurate or not, but I thought we had 155 to date. There's been 20 classes. That math doesn't work out.
No, that's not.
Yeah. Anyway, somewhere around there. And you're on tonight, please put in the comment section, not hashtag, at Ken, and then your name and the class that you were in, so we can give you a shout out. We'd love to acknowledge you're here. So Ken, you want to tell me who's on?
We got John Beck's on.
John, Vietnam vet down in, I don't know where John lives, he's down south, but
Tennessee.
he's also Santa Claus. Yes, that's right too. He's a Danny Bell, what do we call him? A Danny Bell referral. Recruit.
Jack Lane's on.
Jack's not a combat wounded vet, but Jack is an Air Force vet, and Jack is the one that takes care of the Purple Heart Project. I'm sorry, the Bench Brigade. Thank you, Moose.
Jeff O'Connor's on.
Jeffrey O'Connor. Jeff is Jeff. We'll talk more about Jeff later on tonight.
Kevin Burris is on.
Kevin Burris. We'll talk a little bit later tonight.
And Ken Kyle, class of 2017.
Ken Kyle. Jake, is that registering? Ken Kyle? 2017? Ken Kyle. Or is it Kyle Perrell?
Oh,
Yeah, Ken might be
Oh,
reading
you
his
might have
first
put
name.
Ken, yeah.
Kyle Perrell, Newfoundlander.
Yes, that's what it
Yeah, attaboy.
is. And Jim Robinson's on.
Jim, what year?
James.
James Robinson.
Jim.
Jim.
Jim's from Ontario.
August 21.
August 20. Oh, yeah, our Canadian only class. Right. Welcome, gentlemen. Keep me posted, Ken, as soon as you get one.
Sid's on too.
Sid's on. Sid from Sydney. Sid actually works here. He and Al McNeil. Howdy, Sid. Come to work on Tuesday. Rick, next question.
Ken Stewart in Kansas.
Hey, Ken.
How much, if any, room does plywood drawer bottoms need to move?
Really, I don't allow any. I mean, you can almost treat them like you can treat wood in its length. I wouldn't worry about it, especially you're talking about. Well, even yeah, I wouldn't worry about it at all. If you wanted to be safe and you want to leave a total of a 16th, maybe, but I don't think you'd get any dimensional change at all. I think you're good. One of the big advantages of plywood. Next, Rick. Oh, by the way, I'll just tell you what kind of a week we had. So Thursday we had torrential downpour, and the layout in our shop, the building that we're in is a steel fabricated building. It was one great big open space. When we moved in here, we sectioned off, we built a wall that runs this way, and this quarter of the building is my shop. The other quarter on the other side of that wall is our mess hall and our commercial kitchen. And then that half, actually it's more like 5/8, is the classroom. Well, I was standing in the kitchen in the morning. I just turned the grill on. I was going to cook some breakfast. And I happened to look down at my feet and I saw water, a whole line of water coming across the floor. I said, oh, what is this? Anyway, turned out that the snow and the water outside, the water level had gotten above the foundation, so it was coming in underneath the wall. So we scrambled to get out there and dig in the rain and dig through the ice and the asphalt. Managed to get that flowing away. And then didn't discover it until later on in the day. The water was coming through this wall, so all around my lathe, the shavings were all soaked in water, and all of my lumber that was standing against that wall was wet on the bottom. And then I had put a shelf right up here in the corner, because I've been making tons of little boxes, a little project I'm going to do. And I was talking to my wife, and she said, check that far corner, because you remember water used to come in there. Well, there's a pipe up in the corner that we used to run a wire to the other building. And sure enough, the water was coming in there and pouring down. And I had, if you recognize this box, actually it's kind of recovering, but it's not going to. I had made. Did we do a video on this, or was it on?
It's workshop.
On the online workshop. I'd made this box out of English walnut and holly, with the outside lid. Anyway, that was sitting right up against the wall. So this was a puddle of water, and it just ruined it. Made me sick. I lost 3 nice little boxes over there. And then to make it worse, the roof was leaking, and we have 4 retail spots that are about 20 by 18.
16, yeah.
Yeah, on the front. And as those tenants have closed their businesses, we're turning those into rooms where the vets will stay when they're here at classes. And the first one we had finished, or not finished, but we sheetrocked and painted, and the water was leaking in there. So we had to get up on the roof and shovel off all the ice. And anyway, every life a little rain must fall. We had our share. Now you can go, Frick.
James Hennefield in New York.
James in New York.
Is the bridle joint produced with a loose tenon as strong as one with an integral tenon?
So what he's asking, if you're not sure, does anybody know where that bridle joint is that we did the other day? Jake, do you know? Somewhere right along here, there is, there it is. So if you're not sure what a bridle joint is, this piece has a slot. This is 3/4 inch thick material. So this piece has a slot cut out that's 1/4 inch wide. It goes down into here, the depth that this is wide. This piece has a piece cut off of both sides to produce that piece in the middle. So it's kind of like an open mortise and tenon joint. Lots of glue surface, relatively easy to make, nice strong joint. So the question I'm assuming is, if I had a slot in this piece and a slot in that piece, and I just took a 1/4 inch section of wood and glued it into both, would I have the same result? I can't see why you wouldn't. The weak point of this joint is going to be right here, where you've reduced 3/4 of an inch down to 1/4 inch. So it's not going to come apart. Oh, actually, I didn't even glue it. Did you know that was unglued? Guess we didn't. All this time I was sitting there, I could have just taken it apart. So, yeah. So if I took 2 of these, and then I took 1 of these and made it twice as long and just glued it to both and put it together like that, would it be just as strong? Yes. Yes, would be my opinion. Next, Frick.
Jerry Weeks in Comfort, Texas.
Hey, Jerry.
What, if any, is the advantage of being able to raise and lower the outfield table on a joiner?
What, if any, is an advantage of being able to raise and lower the outfeed table? Well, on a traditional jointer, traditional meaning straight knife, you would if you took your knives out to be sharpened, you put them back in, and the knife edge has to be parallel to the outfeed table. So you would get all 3 knives projecting out of the cutter head the same amount. And then what you would do is you would raise or lower the outfeed table to match the top of the cutting circle. So here's your outfeed table, here's your blade spinning around. The top of this table needs to be right at where the top of the knife is. So you can make fine adjustments by raising and lowering. As far as a functional use, occasionally we've done that, but it's not anything you couldn't live without. Typically, the better jointers would always have adjustable in-feed and out-feed tables both. If you were going to put a segmented head on it, which most people today want segmented heads on their jointers just because of number 1, they're carbide. Number 2, they're really easy to change out if you get a nick. You're talking about minutes as opposed to hours. And the cutting angle, the cutting efficiency improves. And you definitely have to have an adjustable outfeed table in that case, because chances are you're not going to buy a segmented cutter head that's going to match exactly the height of your outfeed table. So for those reasons, you want outfeed that is adjustable. Next, Frick.
Next one comes from Pat in Iowa.
Pat in Iowa.
Yeah, he says, what is the best way to avoid tear out when shooting miters?
The best way to avoid tear out when shooting miters? Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I typically don't get any tear out when I'm shooting a miter. The end of it, sometimes you get a little bit of fiber that just gets, it just like a little flimsy piece out at the end, and I just snip that off with the chisel. I don't really know. I mean, I suppose you could go in and do the same thing that we do when we cut a chamfer on the backside. You could go in, and if you knew exactly how long your miter was going to be, and then if you took it like this, if this was the piece, if you had a miter on the end of this, and you'd already cut and removed this, now you're just going to go in and clean up that line. Ahead of time, if you knew exactly where your miter was going to end, and you could make a, how would you do it? I guess you would come back this way just a little bit. so that when you eventually get this line moved down to here, you're ending right at that point. You don't get that little feather. But really, there's not. I would check if you're having a problem. I would check your blade for sharpness, because typically you don't have any kind of tear out at all when you're shooting a miter. There's enough of an angle on there that it's not an issue. Next, Rick.
Fred Robbins in Yamhill, Oregon.
Hey, Fred.
Rob, I like your Woodburn logo. What company did you get it from?
Jake.
You like what?
The wood burner.
The Woodburn logo.
Who is it? Oh, shoot.
Jake will find it. Moose is here tonight. First time you've been here in a while. So Moose, the purveyor of the Dead Cat sweater, to which we always give away 3. Big supporter of the Purple Heart Project. He's always waving our flag. Ken's here. Ken Anthony manages the production in the next shop. And Ken usually volunteers his time to come up here and help us keep things straight. And I'm sure Angie and Lynn will be on. If you don't know who Angie is, this is Angie. She and her sister Lynn take care of all of our Purple Heart t-shirts and the packaging. And I must admit, it's probably the best packaged item we sell. Certainly competes with the men in the shop that package things. So big hi to Angie and Lynn. Thank you for the chocolate. It's delicious. Very dark. I've got my new calendar up. But
Oh, they did our logo. Yeah.
oh, you want the logo or the name of the branding iron?
The branding iron.
Oh, Gearhart Industries.
Gearhart?
Yeah.
Gearhart.com.
Just Google Gearhart Industries.
Google Gearhart Industries. Gearheart, I presume. So we got a couple other interesting prizes to give away tonight. Oh, I forgot to tell you how we work. So for every $1,000 we raise, so what you can do tonight, if you want to be a part of funding these vets that come in, and sometime we've got one coming this year from Australia. The rest are spread out around the United States and Canada. I don't think we have anybody else. This last year we had Zach came over from Ireland. We had who came from Denmark?
Casper.
Casper came from Denmark. Sorry, Casper. Casper came from Denmark. So when we bring vets in from that distance, the expense is a lot more. So it's not an inexpensive proposition. We feed them 19 meals that are made right there in the kitchen that are fantastic. Take care of their lodging. Every vet goes home with approximately $4,000 worth of tools. And we provide the vise and the bench dogs to whoever builds the bench for us. So all of that costs money, of course. If you want to participate, you're welcome to. The link is up there. For every $1,000 we raise, we give away a prize that's been made by a vet. So it just left me real quick. From Maine that made this. Oh my.
Rick Elder.
Huh?
Rick
Elder. So I can't remember. I think Danny actually found Rick. We had a cancellation at the last minute, and Rick's in Maine. So Rick came, really good craftsman. So his other thing is leather. So how do I describe this, Jake?
It's a backpack?
It's a backpack. It's a leather. He made all of it. Oh yeah, I could have lived right there and saw his name. So everything was made by hand, stitching the whole bit, and it's really impressive if you have a close look at it. He told me, I think he had a couple of weeks into this. So you want to be the coolest kid in school. I'd take it just for the smell. I was going to call it a saddlebag. So we're going to give that one away tonight. And then Kevin Burris, who owns Burris Woodworking. Kevin does our laser engraving on either granite or slate. I prefer the slate. And he'll do whatever you want, whether it's a military theme. In this case, it's our mission statement We have numerous, I've all kinds of them that I haven't done, made for me. And then Kevin, by the way, was Army EOD, blown up more times than anybody can count, medically retired, and lives in upstate New York. He and his wife are getting ready to move to Oklahoma. And Jeff O'Connor, he and his wife Kim, are also part of the same group that we work with. And Jeff makes the shave bowls and brushes, as well as the Irish kiss stick, which is what this is. And if you're on the receiving end of this, you won't like Cocobolo anymore. And his wife Kim, oh, I got something else too. Why is somebody calling me? I can't take a call. So Jeff also makes these, and I forgot about this last time, so we'll give this away tonight too. So this is, help me, Jake, what's the steel? Damascus steel. So that's a weapon and a half. So there's there's his logo, and these, I think this is bog oak. On the what are they called? They're not called handles. They're called. Does anybody know what these are called?
Heft? Shucking knives?
No.
No. Want to see if it's sharp? So
Don't poke the bear.
don't poke the bear.
Jeff also, for the rest of the month, is donating proceeds from apparel sales to
On his website, that's right. So if you can check this, can we get that link up on there
Yep.
to Jeff's website? And Kim, his wife, Jeff's wife Kim, is, I guess we would call her a craftswoman. What do you say? What's the proper craftsperson? And she makes custom handbags.
They're called scales, by the way.
Scales, yes. Who said that?
Lots of people.
Jeff Rodman.
Well, we knew it started with an S. So this is the patriotic bag. So if you're south of the border, you'd really appreciate this. I'll be the first to admit, unlike Moose, I don't carry a handbag. So I can't speak to that part of it, but I know craftsmanship. And when you look at the stitching and just the way that it's put together, you'll appreciate it. And you can actually see some of her Instagrams where she does this, the high speed. That's Kim. Howdy, Kim. They're getting ready to move into the new house. And they're also getting ready to, they've got an outreach program they're going to be starting to help combat wounded vets and the wives of combat wounded vets, which could also be considered combat wounded. So, those are some of the prizes tonight. That's the Snippets and Stitches sticker. All right, next, Rick. Did I cover everything I need to cover?
For now. Okay, this one's from Drago Dichev in Santa Barbara, California.
Hang on.
What? What's the matter?
Ferris Butler and Sean Grumbles are on.
Sean Grumbles.
Sean's question was, how can you understand what it is that Luther's saying whenever he speaks?
Well,
Google Translate.
yeah, Google Translate. I spent a little bit of time in South Carolina, down there in Greenville. I would never eat boiled peanuts or grits, but I did eventually pick up on some of his terminology. Big shout out to Sean and Ferris. Ferris is a double or single amputee. I can't remember. You'd never know. And big supporter of combat wounded vets and has done a lot to help them. Sean is active duty. I don't know if we're allowed to say what he does, but he's not secret squirrel. He's dangerous squirrel. Next, Rick.
Drago Dichev in Santa Barbara, California. He says,
Pronounce his name for me again, please.
Drago Dichev.
You're saying it too fast. What's his first name?
Drago,
Drago?
like the guy from Rocky IV. And
Okay.
Dichev is the last name.
Hey, Drago, I got that one. What's his question? Howdy, Drago.
I find tiny particles of wood under the lip of the chip breaker. Does that mean I have to dress and polish the lip of the chip breaker?
Well, your chip breaker, let me grab one so that you can, if you have a modern chip breaker, this is going to be a lot easier. If you got an old style, it's a little more complicated. So if you notice my cabinet here, when we remove this, we have utilized space that we wouldn't otherwise have access to. I'm trying to find one that's put together here. So when you put your blade and chip breaker together, tell me where I need to be in order to see. Is this close enough?
Yeah.
So this is your chip breaker. This is the top piece. And there's a little bit of a lip right there. So when you put it on your blade, and if you hold it up to the light, you should be able to see a gap of light between them, but right at the cutting edge, you shouldn't be able to see any light. So there's a negative angle on the underside of the chip breaker. So only the leading edge makes contact with the back side of the blade. So that when shavings picked up by the cutting edge hit the chip breaker, instead of getting jammed underneath, they should ride right up and over. So a couple of things could be wrong. That may not be seated properly. Sometimes people have gone in not knowing, and they'll flatten the chip breaker without lowering the back end, so they lose that negative angle. And then when you put it on there and tighten it down, it causes that front edge to pop up like that. You may have ruined your chip breaker if that's what you've done. But you just have to go in, and particularly if you're working with an old style, which had a bump right here, you've got to go in and you just have to look and see where it's not making contact. Take the spots where it is making contact. They're going to be high spots, and you've got to work them. And that may mean let me show. I need to show this instead of trying to explain it. So if I had an issue, I would use a diamond stone. The reason I would use a diamond stone, Jake, you're going to be able to get in here. I would use a diamond stone just because it doesn't have to be, you don't have to stop and flatten it, and it will withstand a lot more abuse. Jake's getting geared up, and then he'll come over and I'll show you exactly how to do this. Don't do it on your bench top because it's going to be messy. I'll dig out an old style one too so that you can see that. Ken, where would I have an old style chip breaker?
On a Stanley anywhere.
Right, where's an anywhere Stanley?
Well, we got 400 of them on the other side of the room.
Yeah, neither one of those have a blade in it. Huh? Yeah, when you grab one of those bedrocks, please. Just before you make sure it's got an old one, a skinny blade. So if you're dealing with this, so I first saw these in early 2000s when Lee Nielsen had made the switch. So that's what it looks like. It's just got a reset, an area underneath there that's actually raised. Actually, it's not raised. This is lowered. This is pushed down. So you can feel
Bent.
Bent, right. So the way I address it, if you've gone in and the back of your blade is flat, then all you really need to do is do the same thing with this. So I set it on the stone like that. But what I find is if you want to get it exactly, just about the thickness of a blade, rest it like that. Now it's producing a negative angle, but it seems to be just about right. You're going to have to stay within 1/4 of an inch of this edge, because if you move over too far, you're going to be bumping back here. And with 3 fingers like this, one of the big advantages of the new chip breakers is the thickness. You'll see when Ken brings that over what I mean. And because of that, it doesn't deflect nearly as much in your hand. So I would hold it like this, and I would simply move it forward and back, working that edge. And I would do that until I had a shiny spot that literally went from this corner to that corner. I don't know if you can see it, but it just barely makes it over there. And as long as it makes it over there, I don't care how wide it is, that it suits its function. So now when I sit it on there like this, you can see the gap from here all the way up to there, but right along the cutting edge it makes contact. Now, here's the old style. Grab a screwdriver. How close are we to that new product, Jake?
No idea.
Kit?
No idea.
No?
No.
You know what I'm talking about, the upgrade? Okay, so here's the old style. See how they had that bump? But they're really light. So they'll actually flex under your weight of your fingertips. So, backside of the blade, and you're probably going to have to do that. Go in and flatten the back of the blade. And then you're going to set that on there. Hold it up to the light. Now, if you can you maneuver and see that?
The gap?
Yeah. No, not this gap, the gap at the front.
What am...
If you look underneath in here, you can see it's
okay.
only making contact over there. I'll just stay
I
still.
don't think I'm going to be able to get that. Yeah.
Got
Is
it?
it, it's making corner. It looks like it's making corner contact on the right corner.
Yeah, only. So what I would have to do with that, and when I put a little bit of pressure there, that's going to change, but I still end up seeing a gap on the left side. So what I would do is I would set this up, and I would go in and I would put pressure right there on this corner, and I would work that, and I'd go back and check it, and just keep doing that until when you put this on, and you can put a little bit of pressure right there because that represents the pressure that that screw is going to apply, and you would keep working that until you no longer get a gap in there. And that point, it's going to function properly. But I much prefer the new style chip breaker. They're a lot easier to set up, and the fact that they're so much thicker makes a big difference. And there's the difference in the thickness. All right, hopefully that answers your question. Next, Frick.
Okay, this one comes from Justin Soderquist in Orem, Utah.
Hey, Justin in Orem. I used to live in Provo.
I lived in Orem
Frick lived in Orem.
for 8 months, yep. When milling up small logs into lumber on the bandsaw, is there any advantage to slicing it up when it's green and then stickering and clamping the boards versus waiting a few years for it to dry out first before starting to mill it?
Well, your log is always going to check from the center. And if you're trying to dry a log in its log form, it's going to take years, lots of years, and you're going to lose a lot of it because of the checks. So they always would cut lumber. In fact, that's why they would keep logs in a holding pond to keep the moisture content up. Easier to cut, and it's not going to check. And then you need, once you mill it, then you can go in and sticker it and hope for the best. But yeah, definitely cut it green, mill it green, and then you have to make sure that when you cut it that you leave enough that after it dries and shrinks and twists, you're going to be able to get the finished dimension that you want. So that's why 4/4 lumber, which is 1 inch thick in the rough, when you mill it, you should be able to get 3/4. Sometimes you can get better than that, but you should at least at a minimum be able to get 3/4 surfaced on both sides. So yep, cut it green. Next, Frick.
David Nielsen in Fort Mill, South Carolina.
Hey, David.
Suppose you have made an end grain cutting board and now need to flatten it. What hand planes would you use to flatten the end grain?
I'd use my 5.5. That's my go-to in almost all situations. And if you're alluding to using a low angle plane, well, the difference between the angle that it cuts versus the angle that a standard angle bevel up plane, a bevel down plane works, which would be a 5.5, is not enough to really make any kind of a difference.
Not to mention the weight difference.
Yeah, and I like the weight of the 5.5. So that's what I would use. Just got to be really careful. You got to be really careful at the end. You're gonna have to cut a chamfer. I'll show you that. You're going to have to cut a shallow chamfer. What have I got that I can? I'll illustrate this. So this is the end grain of a piece of Vera wood. We get Super Dave all excited. So you've got a whole bunch of boards all glued together, and you're planing the end grain of all of them, right? So on this far side, you're going to break fiber out. So what you need to do is come in here, and you've got to cut a chamfer. And I can get a pen that works. Your chamfer wants to come in this direction, not like this. It needs to come close to being parallel to the top. And then as you plane, you're going to get closer and closer and closer to the edge. You got to stop just before you get there, because if you go beyond, it'll break. But a very shallow chamfer, shallow meaning close to this angle, only just a little bit below and coming in this way. And then you should be able to plane it without a problem. Make sure you want your blade nice and sharp. Have the board well supported so it's not wiggling, bouncing around on you. And it shouldn't be an issue. Get a good sharp blade. Watch 32 seconds to sharp. Luther will leave a link in there. And you got to have good sharpening gear. I always tell people, spend your money on your sharpening stones because they determine how well the rest of your edge tools are going to work. Put good gas in your Lamborghini. Next, Frick.
Gary Gibbons in Marysville, Washington. Gary Gibbons.
Yeah, and where?
Marysville, Washington State.
In Marysville. I don't know where that is.
It's in Washington State.
I lived in Vancouver, Washington for 6 months.
He wants to know, what is the correct amount of clamping pressure in general when gluing 2 or more boards together?
So I would say that most people overclamp, myself included, at least when I began. If you want your 2 pieces of board to come together, dry before any glue, you want your 2 boards to come. Hi, Moosey. You want your 2 boards to come together. When you put glue on there, you want to make sure that you spread the glue over the entire surface. Don't just go in there and drizzle it and hope that it's going to magically make its way around. You need to cover the surface, whether you do it with a scraper, not a scraper, but like a trowel with really fine notches, or a foam brush, or a roller, whatever. And you want to apply enough pressure so that you just get a nice little fine bead of squeeze out all the way around. So I would tend to say, I can't give you an exact number, but I would tend to say that less pressure is better than too much pressure. And the best way to tell is just, you got to have squeeze out all the way around. That way you know you've at least managed to pull the 2 boards together. Don't go crazy with the glue, and don't be stingy. And don't take too long either, because even the stuff that has lots of open time starts to skim over when you get a really thin coat spread over a big area. That's a lot of surface area, and that's giving off moisture really quick and losing its tack. Okay? Any more vets, Ken? Frick, next question.
David Gadbury in Arkansas.
Hey, David.
Would you recommend using biscuits for tabletop glue-ups in order to help lining up the boards?
I've never been a fan of biscuits. I mean, if you want to, fine. I would, when I glue up my bench top, I have 2 splines, and that's just cut on the table saw. One spline is about 3/4 of an inch down from the top, and the other one's about 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom. And I like to use 2 because 1, you can get a little misalignment with 1 over a long length. 2, can't. And just a loose spline in there, that's all you need. If you want to use, you don't gain anything from a strength perspective by using splines or lamella. What did he ask me about? Biscuits. It's just for alignment purposes. So if it's big, and if you're doing a big table, it's a heck of a lot easier to have something helping you align it than it is to try to do it freehand, so to speak. But I've done it before where I just glued 2 boards together at a time, and you can start on one end and you can just raise and lower one board as you come along with your clamps to get it nice and flush. Wait for that to set, 30 minutes, and then glue on the next piece instead of trying to do 6 boards all at once, which ends up in a mess. In fact, 6 boards all at once,
You wouldn't have the spread.
you've got glue drying, and you've got, that's you know, you're trying to put, that's a lot of surface area to get enough clamping pressure on. So I think you're actually better off doing just 2 boards at a time, and then glue on the 3rd one and clamp it together, and then glue on the 4th one, allowing drying time in between each one, and then you don't need to use any kind of alignment apparatus.
Somebody asked what's a spline?
So I'm glad people ask these questions, because I sometimes think, well, of course, if they're on here, they know a certain amount. But hey, picking new people up all the time.
Spline in one of the doors.
Well, I actually had a piece of wood that had a spline cut in it that we were demonstrating. I saw it out here, but so a spline is this. I've got a miter on here, and to strengthen it, I made a saw cut that went through like this, and then I took a piece of wood, grains running this way, and I glued that in place. So that would be referred to as a spline. In the application I was just talking about, if I was going to glue 2 boards together on their edge, and I wanted, for alignment purposes, something to keep them, I would take those 2 boards, like this, and I would cut a groove in this one and a matching groove in that one, and then I would take a thin piece of wood, which I don't have right here. No, yeah, here I do. I would take a thin piece of wood like this, and that piece of wood would be set down in. I would actually glue it. I would glue it into this one first, so that I'm not having to manage 3 pieces of wood instead of just 2. Glue that one into that groove, and then when you glue the next one on, that helps to line it up. So that would be referred to as a spline. That's actually a piece of holly, as in deck the halls. Next, Rick.
Next one comes from Luke Bergseth.
Luke, where is he?
Detroit Lakes, Minnesota.
Detroit Lakes. That sounds cold.
Uh,
Hopefully you're nice and warm, Luke.
He says, I'm trying to use screws as a secondary fastener to glue, obviously, to fasten hardwoods together. Hickory, spalted, tamarind, maple, etc. Everything I use breaks even with pre-drilled holes. Any suggestions on what type of screw to use?
The screws are breaking with pre-drilled holes. So if you're using brass screws, they're going to break regardless. If you're using steel screws, they shouldn't be breaking. If they are, then you need to increase the size of your pilot hole. So you want to have the root diameter. So if you take a screw that you're going to use, I'll use a number 8, and then take I have a cheap little pair of calipers that I use frequently when I can find them. There they are. And what you see it, Mooser? So what you want to do is you want to measure right down in here, not at the tip of the threads, but right in between the threads. And that measures, I can't read these dumb things, but I would guess and say it's a strong 1/16. Well, if I was in a really hard wood like hickory, I would bump that up to an 1/8. And that's a little bit of wiggle room on the 1/8, but that's got a really deep thread, and there's going to be lots of holding power on a really hard wood, and you're not going to risk splitting it or breaking the screw. So be generous. Better to be a little generous on the pilot hole than to be too small, particularly in really hard woods. And then make sure you're deep enough too, because a lot of times you don't drill them deep enough, they're going to bottom out and you'll twist them off. So
There are charts online too, all over the internet showing recommended
pilot holes, yeah. And if you can't find good screws, we sell really good screws that have wide space between the threads. They're self-tapping, so they'll cut the thread, which is something you don't get on a normal screw. I'll show you if Jake can get in close on this. So the way they cut that right there means that that actually goes in and it cuts the slot for the thread, and it does a much better job. I really like these. We have them in number 6 sizes and number 8 sizes. Next, Frick. They're Robertson heads, but you can also use Phillips on them as well.
Marley Woolfolk in Buick Creek, British.
Marley,
Yep, in Buick Creek, British Columbia.
another Canadian.
How do you tell, or when do you say your blade is dull and needs to be resharpened?
We talking hand plane blade? Doesn't say.
Yeah, I would assume that.
Okay, yes. So the first thing that you're going to see is your shaving is going to start to come out in ribbons. Instead of one full width piece, it'll be full width, but it'll be cut. And if you were to look at the edge of your blade under a microscope, you'd start to see little nicks where little pieces of carbon are coming out, and that's causing this serrated shaving. That's the first indication. Second one is that you're no longer picking up a shaving. As your blade dulls, it actually gets shorter, right? And in order to keeping it in the wood, you're going to have to keep advancing the blade in order to get down in there and pick up a piece of wood. And the third indicator is it's going to be harder to push. Really sharp blade, we'll go through that wood without any resistance or very little. As it dulls, it's going to require more. So I prefer to use the serrated shaving as the indicator, because the other ones, here's the line, here's where it starts super sharp, here's where it's creating dust because it's so dull. So the first indicator along this line is going to be the serrated shaving, and then it's going to be having to advance the blade, and then it's going to have to be a lot harder push. So I want to resharpen when you're up here, not when you're down there. It's just because you get so much better surface. If I prefer to use my plane so that anytime I'm done planing, that surface is essentially finished. Okay, next, Frick. How are we doing tonight?
We've got about 500.
How are we doing for donations?
That has to come from Luther.
Okay.
He'll send me a text message, I'm sure.
Okay. And big thank you to Rick Elder, too. That was nice, Rick. Unsolicited, just wanting to help. Awesome. Thank you.
All right, Roger Brown in Oswego, Illinois.
Roger in Oswego, Illinois.
Yep. How do you orient either yourself or the wood to cut dovetails on a long board such as the front side of your workbench, which has beautiful dovetails at each end?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So ideally, I'll start off with that. In my last shop, my bench was on the second floor. So right underneath, and it was modified. Every time I cut a bigger board, I had to modify it. So right underneath here, underneath my vise, there was a trap door. And I would simply open the trap door and I could cut the end of a board that might be 12 feet long. No, right here at bench height. How do I do it now? Well, when I built my very first bench, that now is Jake's desk, I secured it in the vise, and then I framed up with some triangulation, some support, so when I stood on top of the bench, I was able to cut at the height that I would want to cut at, which would be right about here, but it was well supported. So if I was in the shop today and I was going to cut dovetails at the end of a 6-foot board, how would I do it? I'm not skilled enough to lay it like this and saw down this way. Suppose I could force myself. I would probably do the same thing. I would stand it up here. I would clamp it to the bench. I'd stand on the bench to do the sawing, and what I would probably do would be to clamp another board, a heavier board behind it, and clamp it and support it. I think I would do that. If I had a 2x8 and I had that board, that 2x8 supported somewhere on the floor, clamped here, and then had it clamped just a few inches below the board I'm working on, and you had them all clamped together, I think that would be sufficiently strong enough that I could then, and steady so that I could saw it. That's what I would do. You gotta get a little bit creative. You gotta make short furniture. Next, Frick.
Sean McLean in Montreal.
Hey, Sean. Wow, we can't miss in Canada tonight.
When making a wedge through mortise and tenon, what wood grain considerations must you take into account to avoid any splitting, or is this even a problem? Thank you.
So he's talking about this. So this is read that again, please.
When making a through wedge mortise and tenon, what wood grain considerations must you take into account to avoid any splitting, or is this even a problem?
Well, I'll hit the ones that may or may not be obvious. So your grain has to run this way, and you're going to be wedging perpendicular to the way the grain runs. So if you tried to do a wedge tenon across the grain, it would split. So it's got to be it
has to be compressing the fibers and not splitting them.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's the way I would want, but this is the way the grain's running, and my wedge is going against that. You couldn't turn this tenon around like this and wedge across perpendicular to the grain. You have to wedge parallel to the grain. Meaning, no, I didn't say that right. Yeah, the wedging action is shoving this piece and this piece that way, and that has to be parallel to the way the grain runs. So the question comes up: well, what if you want to put in a shelf, and you're trying to use through wedge tenons on a shelf? What did we do down there? Didn't we do that on this?
Yeah, we did. A little different.
So here's a cabinet we built to hold toolbox. So that's the shelf that's in here. There's 1, 2 in the bottom. The top.
Douglas fir in the middle.
This piece right here.
No, but I mean in the tenon itself.
Oh yeah, we did that. We did do that a little bit different.
The same principle.
Yeah. They're just going to be a little bit shorter. And I've actually doubled them up before too. So put, instead of 1, 2, 2 here, 2 here, 2 here. What I did different here is I actually didn't. I added so that's my shelf, and I created a wedge in the mortise, and I filled the extra with 2 walnut wedges. So now you have 1, 2, 3 pieces glued together, and they create that dovetail effect.
Instead of 5.
Instead of 5, right. And what Jake means by that is normally the normal way of doing it is you're making 2 cuts, just like we show on here. You're making 2 cuts at the end of the edge of the tenon, so you've essentially got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of wood all being glued together to create that wedge or that dovetail shape. What I did on that one was I left this alone, and I simply filled in all of the space created by the wedge-shaped tenon mortise and glued it onto here. But, I mean, when you glue 2 pieces of wood together, you got 1. Hope that made sense. But a bit discombobulated, but my hair's my eyes. Frick, next.
Chris in Roswell, New Mexico.
Hey, Chris. And Roswell, New Mexico?
Yeah, I think that's where Area 51 is, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. No, isn't Area 51 in Nevada?
Oh, maybe, I don't know.
But there's something interesting about Roswell, New Mexico.
Yeah, it's where Chris is
It's
from.
where Chris is from. That's
Yeah,
what makes it
and he
famous.
has a question. Do you have advice on getting the cut started with hand saws and back saw? Saws either bind or skim across woods with inaccurate results. Thank you for your help.
Yeah, by mine. That's why we do it. We do that.
But hand saws as well.
Yeah. So let's talk tenon saws first, to include a dovetail.
Even
And-
back saws.
Yeah, tenon saw. So any kind of a back saw, which has got a heavy brass back, so different size tenon saws, dovetail. So I always create an anchor point with my opposite index finger and thumb. And in creating that anchor point, I pinch the wood, but I pinch the wood using the bottom quarter. You'll see when I show you the indent, the bottom quarter of each digit. By doing that, that produces the farthest point of my finger and thumb is up above the end of the board. If you're down like that, it's right at the end of the board. If I do it like this, that bump comes above the teeth, because I always press laterally. So if I'm pressing laterally with the saw, and I'm anchored, I'm pinching this so it can't move, then because I'm pressing laterally and this is solid, when I start sawing, it can't skirt one way or the other. If I press down here, I may cut my fingers because now the set of the teeth are touching the farthest point of my finger and thumb. Doing it like this makes the farthest point of my finger and thumb up above the teeth. So press laterally, and then just go ahead and start your cut. And if you're slipping or sliding one way or the other, then you're not pressing laterally or you haven't got a good anchor point. And that, by inchworming those fingers, you can push that in so that you can start the saw exactly where you want. So that would apply to a tenon saw. It would apply to a dovetail saw. Another thing that you can do, particularly on tenons, is you can go in and I don't ever have that knife. You can go in, pause, hey boys, and you can make a cut like this. Then before you start, you can take your chisel and just carefully cut a little trough in the waist. Now when you set your saw, you're sitting in that trough and you have a little wall up here, and that will help you start extremely precisely. And when you're dealing with a hand saw, and you're wanting to rip a piece.
Casper's on.
Casper's on? Casper, how are you, brother? Let me just grab my... Do we have to throw a salute up to the Danish flag in honor of Casper?
Also Pete Ambrose.
Pete! Pete hasn't been on in a while. It's good to see you, Pete. Pete Ambrose of dovetailing fame. I'm looking for it. It's around here somewhere. Where? Pete Ambrose, Vietnam vet, one of my favorites. That was a memorable week. Pete's from Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Went ahead and built his own bench. Couldn't wait for the bench brigade. Where's his dovetail? Here it is.
International it is.
It is. That's the Pete Ambrose. He still calls it a
Miter.
miter. He didn't sign it. So now we're going to talk about starting a cut with a handsaw. See if I can find a piece of lumber that wouldn't mind being cut.
And about that wide one right there.
What? Why?
Just rip a strip.
Well, I don't want to waste any.
Well, just rip a strip off of it.
There, I'll find a piece of wood right here that's got...
Oh, that's a good piece.
So if I'm cutting this, I'll use my thumb as an anchor point. Typically, you're going to drag back And once you get going, it'll just continue. But getting it started, you got to use your thumb again. You want to be careful. A lot of people have short thumbs because of this. So probably easiest to pull back till it gets started. But I'm pushing against my thumb. And you'll be able to get a good handsaw at your favorite hand tool shop soon. Say no more. Next question, Frick.
I just wanted to mention that you mentioned the Branch Brigade, so I wanted to show a couple of pictures that Jack sent along for some
What are you showing?
bench deliveries.
Who?
Uh,
David?
Jesse, Davids, and Charles.
Jesse Millar
Yep.
down in Texas.
So I'll put them on the screen. So Jamie Fagel in North Carolina built Charles Robinson's. David Robinson and Jack Lane built Jesse Millar's.
Yeah.
And retired Army Colonel / Chaplain Matt Wasaki and Jack Lane built David's. So he
That's
calls
the Bench Brigade hard at work.
Yep.
Wonderful. Did Jack let us know how many benches have been delivered? Like to keep that stat up to date. Ken, if you have any vets to share a shout out to? Okay, next question, Frick.
John Donati in Memphis, Tennessee wants to know
Hey, John.
if you will turn any requested exotic wood for an entire set of bench and mortise chisels.
Say that again, John.
He wants to know if you will turn any requested exotic wood for an entire set of bench and mortise chisels.
Yes. Yes.
All right. John Estep from Tempe, Arizona.
Hey, John.
He says, after 4 years, should one be proficient at the craft? I dabble in just about all aspects of woodworking, but feel I'm not great at any one type of build, and I feel like giving up. What should I do?
Well, bit vague. 4 years every other Saturday. 4 years, 5 days a week. So I've taught quite a few people, and I've taught guys who have come into the class, first timers, and they have a knack, and by the end of the week, they're doing things with a level of precision. The single biggest problem I've encountered is finding people who don't have an eye for precision. What I mean by that is every once in a while we get somebody in the class that figures it fits as long as both ends of the board are in the same room. That's almost literal. It fits when they touch and there's no gap between them. And they not when you have to use a sledgehammer to put them together. They just fit. If you have the ability to see that, even though you don't have the ability to do it, but you're a good critic for your own work, so that you recognize that it's not right yet, and you keep working at it, you'll get there. It's the ones that have good enough as part of the vocabulary that will probably never get there because they're not willing to push themselves to the point where it's perfect. I always try to encourage guys. I said, it's only good enough. It's only finished when you can no longer see how it can be improved. Drives me crazy. Because if I can see something that needs to be improved, then it has to be improved, or else I'm not going to sleep. So I think anybody can develop the hand-eye coordination required to do good woodwork, but do they have the mental part that will push them to get it right? In 4 years, can you do it? Sure you can. Put the time in. Next, Frick.
Tyler Burke in California wants to know
Hey, Tyler.
what your process is when it comes to designing a project.
Well, that's a good question. So what's the last thing we designed in here that we went through the whole process on?
Standing desk?
For sure, like a piece of furniture or shop furniture?
Piece of furniture.
Ooh, that'd be a standing desk. But in here, I don't think there's anything in here.
So typically what I would have done, well, this, didn't we do a model of that? Okay, so I was going to design a piece of furniture. First of all, there's the really wide parameters. What's it used for? What are the overall, how tall, how wide, how deep? And that's you're just bringing it down to a cube that you know you're going to fill this space. Of course, you're going to figure out the materials. And then I usually do a model. Just trying to think if I have any scale models around here that I had some the other day. Where did we put them? I found them when I was cleaning up. But I used to build scale models of whatever piece of furniture it was. I'm just looking to see if I can.
Oh, there's scale they were. Where did you put them?
Somewhere in this sea of wood, there are scale models. What are you saying, Fred?
Just waving.
Who to?
The camera.
Why?
Because he thinks they care.
They do care.
No, they don't. Well, I can't find it, of course. Oh, just a second. Let me one quick look over here. Oh, I know where they are. Can you talk? Interview Ken for a second. I know exactly where they are. Tell him what you're doing, Ken.
Frank,
Yes.
can you play that music from Jeopardy? Not Jeopardy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Jeopardy. I don't have it though.
Sing it. They are. Just different sizes are out.
Okay. So I had an acquaintance who was an anesthetist. He was in charge of that department, and one of the doctors was retiring, and he wanted me to design and build a desk for him.
For the retiring doctor?
Yeah, yeah. So this was the model. You know, I did the drawers just with some kerfs, but that was to scale. And I took the time, I mean, this is 1991 or 92, so it's been a while ago. But I finished it all out in the actual wood that it would be used in, put a finish on it and the whole bit. And then, okay, do you like it? And if they liked it, no, there's not a ton of work involved in this. On something that if dovetails were going to be a feature of it, I thought I could have found that one, but I didn't. Then I would do the dovetails as well. That was a bit eccentric. If they liked that, and depending on what it was, I would either go from here directly to building it, or I would build a full-scale mock-up. So when we did this, when we designed, actually we're still in the process, when we designed this cabinet, we built the mock-up. So this section and this section are still the mock-up, made out of just plywood and pine. This section made out of bird's eye and mahogany is part of the finished one. We went through, we built a mock-up because, again, you have far less material involved. And, you know, this is right off the sawn edge of the table saw, so I wasn't terribly worried. I just wanted the overall shape. And then we went in, and if we liked it, okay. If not, we made modifications and changes. The idea here was, once it was completed and we liked it, then we replaced it and did the whole thing out of the finished wood, which in this case, as I mentioned, is bird's eye maple and mahogany. So once you have the overall look through a model, if you're building it for a client, sometimes it really pays, and I would sometimes make it out of styrofoam and draw in the doors and drawers so that you could put it in the room and say, okay, is that what you want? Because sometimes people really don't have a concept of how big something is. You put it in there and all of a sudden it's, oh, whoa, that's way too big. So again, make all those changes a lot easier in styrofoam than it is in finished wood. And then once that was done, now it was a matter of, okay, now the nitty gritty, what wood is it going to be, the joinery, figuring out all that part. That comes second nature now because I've done enough of it that You just know, well, if it's going to be a piece of wood being joined that way, there's option 1, 2, and 3. If it's 2 pieces of wood being joined that way, there's only one option, dovetails, and whatever. That's how we do it. If you really want to know, if you join our online workshop, I don't promote this as much as I should. We try to get in, we give you 3 45-minute episodes each week. We allow a few weeks for when we're teaching the classes. But we've built numerous pieces of furniture in there. Would you say at least 30, maybe more?
More.
More. And some of those, we went through the whole process of model.
Not that.
No, but
Not
we
that
did.
not that style model.
Yeah, we did.
You built miniatures?
Yeah. We did that with the the thing out there.
The portable toilet?
Portable. We did that. Yeah, we did that we did that a miniature model out of that. So you can go back in there and you can watch all those, and that stuff's all recorded, every minute of it. And you can access literally every minute. Yeah, there's 3,000 episodes on there covering numerous pieces of furniture. And that whole site is going to be revamped and cataloged better and whatever. But it's all there. Good question. Next one, Frick.
Paul Sevcik in White Bear Lake, Minnesota.
Hey, Paul.
I'm embarking on this dovetail adventure and in trying your methods. For through or half dovetails on projects like chests or dressers, what is your preferred woods for the drawer sides?
Okay, I just got all thrilled about the dovetail bit. Read it again.
What's your preferred species for drawer sides?
On what?
When you do dovetail for drawer sides,
But on what piece?
projects like chests or dressers.
Okay, so house furniture. Well, there's a couple of criteria, and the first one is all built around ego, and that means you want maximum contrast. You're going to go through the time to do that. You want that to just jump out at you. So if it's dark, primary wood is the main wood. Secondary is the stuff behind the main wood. So in this case, the primary wood is mahogany. The secondary is aspen. Why aspen? Well, because it's white and it really stands out nicely. If you use any kind of a brownish wood, the dovetail almost disappears. I got an example around here somewhere of where I used mahogany drawer sides with bird's eye maple front, and you can't even see the dovetail. The two woods are so close in color. So contrast is always a big one. Here's a walnut drawer with poplar, which is going to be a little more durable. The only thing I don't like about poplar is it gets kind of a grayish white. I don't like the green heartwood either. Aspen I like because it's closer to being white. Holly is the nicest. Holly is white, and it's very hard. It takes a beautiful finish right off the hand plane, but it's so stinking expensive. So poplar is probably going to be your best choice for drawer sides in terms of durability because it's relatively hard, whereas aspen is not. To compensate over here, what I did is I used what are called drawer slips. So that's a piece, in this case, a piece of mahogany that's glued to the underside, and that increases the wear surface so that this drawer will last a whole lot longer, because really the only part of this that wears is going to be that bottom running surface. So go for good contrast. You gotta throw expense in there. You can't, holly would be a lovely wood to use, but you'd spend more money on the holly than you would on the primary wood. Workability. I wouldn't want to make my drawer sides out of hard maple just because it's a lot harder to cut, it's a lot harder to chisel, it's a lot harder, period. So find a wood in that middle range. That's, again, poplar really comes in.
You want it light.
Huh? Yeah, you want it. That's another thing too, right? Good point. Especially on a big drawer, you want the drawer to be as light as possible. You don't want it weighing 50 pounds. If I was going to use a blonde wood, then I would want to use a dark wood for drawer sides, and that gets a little more complicated. I've done some in here with, I use walnut for drawer sides. Walnut's a pleasant wood to work with. A little bit, I don't know what the specific gravity is. In comparing it, what?
It's on the back of one of those white things.
In comparing it to poplar, it wouldn't be that much harder. It would be
I
harder,
think
but
it's
not that
600 to
much.
800.
Versus,
No, 600 for the poplar, 800 for.
oh, well then that's really close. Mahogany was always a favorite for English craftsmen for drawer sides. If it was a nice contrast, again, that's going to be expensive. So I would have.
The end grain of maple is actually pretty dark.
Yeah, that's why if you use it on cherry, you lose the contrast. So I would say, barring unique circumstances, poplar would probably be a number 1 choice, aspen would be number 2, and then I would say walnut would be number 3 in the case where you need a dark side on a light colored front. Good question. Next, Frank.
Tate Hogan in the chat from Belfast, Maine says.
What's his name?
Tate Hogan.
Tate?
Tate.
T-A-T-E?
Yep.
Tate in Belfast, Maine, just down the street.
Yeah. If you did not have access to plywood, what would you use for bottoms or backs to boxes and cabinets?
Well, I actually prefer solid wood. I just think it adds a level. Solid wood drawer bottoms adds a level of, what's the word?
Craftsmanship?
Well, not necessarily craftsmanship, because plywood can be extremely well done as well. What's another word for richness? Elegance. Yeah, elegance. That's a good word. I like that word, Ken. I knew there's a reason we had you here.
Ken the thesaurus.
Yeah. So here's an example. The bottom of this box is a piece of holly. The bottom of this box is a solid piece of pine. The bottom of this box is a piece of plywood, but it's got leather glued to it on that side. These drawers are all, these
Plywood.
bottoms are all plywood. Those ones are plywood. These ones are, those ones are plywood as well. Somewhere in here, I know the drawer, oh, this drawer right here. This drawer. This is a pine. I love pine because, again, it's a nice light wood. So this is a solid pine bottom. Aspen could be used on bottoms as well because it's light.
Somebody asked in chat about cedar.
Yeah, I was gonna say that cedar's nice. In fact, I've got one of the boxes I just did has a. This one has yellow cedar for the bottom. Talk about expensive.
Depends on where you are.
Yeah, that's true. There's areas where it's inexpensive. So cedars are really nice because they can impart a nice smell, especially in chest of drawers. Annika's here tonight. So if you want to witness a little miracle, come here, Annika. So Annika is daughter number
6.
I just checking to make sure.
That's a number. What?
Daughter
No.
number
5.
Oh, whoops.
But 6 in math.
You said it, I didn't. Child number 6.
No, child number 7, daughter number 5.
She was not right on anything.
I was ready.
She's ours. She's one of ours. So Annika was diagnosed in early December with MS. And at the time, she was having to use a walker. It got that bad. Couldn't, she's right-handed, couldn't write with her right hand, couldn't eat with her right hand. She was away at university and was having to reach down with her left hand to lift her right foot up onto a curb. She had no feeling. It got to the point where she had no feeling from the waist down, from the elbow down. And my wife was not satisfied with what was being told to us. So I won't tell you a whole lot more, but we went the natural route, and Annika now walks without a cane. She can
Show us your breakdancing routine.
shake hands. She can write with her right hand again. She can eat with her right hand. She can kick butt with her right foot. What else can you do?
What can't I do is a shorter list.
Oh, yeah, what can't you do there? She can pick up little Moosey. She babysat him all day. There. And Annika now works here. She has an office. She shares Jake's office, and she makes all the calls to customers on second, third, fourth, fifth order.
Jake's office is the bathroom. We all know that.
What?
Jake's office is the bathroom.
And Rex is behind me. Rex hasn't been around, but Rex still works here part-time. Thank you, Annika. Good go. Next question.
Patrick Bishop.
Hey, Patrick.
In Swansea, UK.
Come here, you little runt. What's he saying?
Says, hi, Rob. When using a bridle or half-lap joint, what is the maximum width of board that can be used before cross-drain construction is an issue?
Yeah, that's that is an issue. Well, the only problem is swings in relative humidity. So if you're in a climate-controlled environment, to where I'll give you an example. So I have a good friend that I did a very nice kitchen for him back in the year 1999. And his house that he built, he wanted it to fit into the neighborhood. So you would have never known it was a new house because it was constructed in that Victorian period, or to look like. So he had really wide moldings. I mean, it would take a day to trim out one window because you went around it with so many different pieces of wood. But the moldings were wide. And I told him, I said, those miters are going to open up. You need to get both dehumidification and humidification so you can control the environment in here. Well, he didn't believe, because I was telling him for the benefit of my kitchen that I built him. Because there was no drawer guides. Everything was built like a piece of furniture, box in a hole. And he didn't pay attention until all of a sudden the miters, these wide miters, started to open up. So he went in and had an expensive system that keeps the relative humidity in a really narrow band. If you can do that, then you're not going to have an issue. But if you're building something for someone and then you're shipping it somewhere to another part of the country or world, and they may not have the same capacity to control or monitor that, then you're going to be in trouble. And I would say you get much beyond 3.5 inches, yeah, you're going to have, it's cross-grain construction. So control it by controlling the atmosphere where it's going to be, but just bear in mind that wood is going to move regardless. So you get out and, you can look, Bruce Hoadley's book will tell you how much a board is going to move for every inch in width for the relative change in humidity. So. Next question.
Next one comes from Chad Green.
Hey, Chad, where is he?
Grass Lake, Michigan.
Hey, Chad in Grass Lake.
And on a separate note, Chad also, for those of us who follow us on Instagram, and those who don't should, but anyway, we did a Throwback Thursday last week where we submitted an old picture of Rob and got everyone to guess what year it was taken. And Chad won by guessing 1989, so he gets 10 extra ballots in tonight's draw. So follow us on Instagram for your chance to get something like that. But he had a question as well. He says, I don't have a disc sander to be able to prep and or sharpen my marking gauge. My marking gauge wheel like you suggest on one of your YouTube videos. What other technique/tools would you suggest?
You can sharpen it. It's going to take a little bit longer. You can sharpen it on any kind of a stone by just taking it and laying it face down and sitting there for the next 3 hours with your finger and making little circles. And if it's not in really bad shape, if you have to move a lot of metal to get it sharp, to get that bevel to come to a point, then it's going to take some time. Use a coarser stone, but you can do them that way. We do them the way we do with under power, just to speed the process up. And a lot of times they come and there's the flat front, and then they've got the bevel. And instead of it coming to a point like this, it's actually got a flat spot up there. Well, you've got to remove all of this material to get down there until that creates an actual knife edge.
He's got the same hair as Joe Biden in the back.
That's where the similarity stops. Next.
Matt in Tucson says, I want to pick up a pair of your saws, but I only have a budget and space for 2. A joinery crosscut is a no-brainer, but I'm trying to determine whether to get a dovetail saw or a tenon or large tenon saw for the second. Thoughts?
Dovetail. A dovetail, because the dovetail saw and the tenon saw are the same, except for the fact that the tenon saw has a bigger tooth and a thicker plate. But for me, I would be inclined to cut more dovetails than I would mortise and tenon joints. And you can cut a 2-inch wide mortise with your dovetail saw.
Tenon.
No, with your dovetail saw.
No, you can cut a 2-inch wide tenon with
Thank
your
you.
dovetail saw.
You can, at least I didn't say tendon. You can cut a 2-inch wide tenon with your dovetail saw with relative ease. You're getting into wider than that, then you're really taxing it. But I would say, and if anybody, whenever anyone asks me, I always say, dovetail saws first purchase, joinery crosscut is second purchase, medium tenon is third purchase. If you want to know, fourth would be the large tenon, and fifth would be the bench crosscut. Now we have two more to fit in the small, or the three-quarter dovetail and the 3/4 crosscut. I really like the 3/4 crosscut because it's a 15 thou blade, and it's for doing really fine work. It's a nice saw. It's just sized perfectly for this type of work, small boxes, anything like that. Next question, Frick. Any more vets? I just threw that out to him. If you're a combat wounded vet that has been a member of our scholarship program, we've got 20 classes. Please give us a shout out. Just in the chat, put down @Ken and then your name and the class that you were in, and we'd love to acknowledge you and give you a shout out. Sorry, Frick, go ahead.
David in California, when I rip on my table saw, the 2 ends of a board are not exactly the same width. The cut board does not have perfectly parallel sides. I carefully align the blade with the miter slot and the fence to the miter slot.
Okay, you got to say that again.
When I rip on my table saw, the 2 ends
hold on. When you rip on your table saw,
the 2 ends of the board are not exactly the same width.
So I'm ripping a board, say 8 inches wide, and if I understand this, that's 4 foot long board is 8 inches at one end, but it's less or more than 8 inches at the other end. Okay.
The cut board does not have perfectly parallel sides.
The cut board?
Yeah.
Well, the board that he just cut.
Yeah, does not have, I thought he said cupped. Cut board does not have perfectly parallel edges.
I carefully aligned the blade with the miter slot and the fence to the miter slot.
Okay.
That's it.
So, my first question would be, is the edge that you're putting against the fence straight? If it's not, that's going to create a problem, because at some point, if it's got a bit of a bow in it, at some point, in order to keep it tight to the fence here, it's going to be out from the fence at the back end. The other problem is that a lot of times when you make a cut, there's internal stress in the board and it gets disrupted, and that causes the board to twist one way or the other. And if it either pushes the board into the fence, into the blade, or away from the blade, that's going to create a problem. But if you've got a flat bottom on your board, don't care about the top. The board on the bottom is flat. That same flat edge was against your joiner fence and gave you a straight edge. So now you have a reference face on the bottom and a reference edge. If your table saw fence is straight, there's no woos in it, and it's parallel to the blade, then when you run that board through, everything has to go in between here and here. So if it's 4 inches there, by the time you get to the end, it's still 4 inches here to here. That board has to be. The only difference would be if this wasn't straight and it was able to rock like that as you're passing it through. That's the only thing that I can imagine. Make sure your bottom surface is flat and your reference edge against the fence is straight and square to the bottom. If that's the case, I can't understand how you could, anything could be thrown off. Ken?
Rick Elder, who made the backpack.
Yeah.
He's on tonight.
Howdy, Rick. Was he not on earlier? He maybe just, I said I wanted to acknowledge you, Rick, and say thank you. I really appreciate it, and the belt fits. Hopefully it'll fit even better after the next couple of months. That's a beautiful piece of kit.
Jimmy.
Oh, you know what? He gave me some other stuff too. They're up in my office. We'll do those on another night. Some other stuff to give away. What, Jimmy?
Jim Meakin.
Jim Eakin.
Oh, Jim Eakin. Golden eye. There's a Hawkeye and there's a golden eye. Howdy, Jim. The next Rick.
Doug Ivy in Rexburg.
Hey, Doug.
On
In
your
Rexburg. My wife spent a year in Rexburg going to school.
On your Cosman benches with the water-resistant MDF top, how do you treat the edges? Also, do you still use the cyanacrylate glue to strengthen the edges of the dog holes, or is the water-resistant MDF edges strong enough?
No, the only thing about the water resistant is that whatever glue they've used resists absorbing water. We use, how many extra coats do we spray? When we spray the top, we use lacquer. How many extra times do we do the edge?
The edge gets 4 to 1.
Okay, so for every 1 coat on top, there's 4, we spray the edge 4 times. And the lacquer will kind of, it wouldn't be practical to use cyanacrylate around the entire edge. You'd go through 10 bottles at $12 a piece. So we spray the edge, and as you just heard what Ken said, so that gets a lot of absorption. And do we cyanacrylate down inside the dog holes? And we cyanacrylate down inside the dog holes. Still, so same treatment on the waterproof MDF, and it responds well. Makes for a really durable, really flat, durable top. It solved the only problem that I was always nervous about with making an MDF top, was the fact that if anybody put a glass on there that had even condensation in the summer, would leave a raised ring. Now you don't have to deal with that anymore. It's dense. It's actually heavier by how much? How much heavier is the MDF bench than the plywood, than the Baltic? Do you remember, Jake? 15 pounds? Might even be 20.
Yeah, I think it's no, I think it's
15 pounds difference, so nice and dense. Next, Rick.
Derek Flipson in Mapleton, Georgia.
Hey, Derek.
I am pondering making a chessboard from Verawood and holly. What are your thoughts on how to best to glue up these woods together, given that Verawood is an oily wood?
Yeah. Well, I have not worked with I don't think I have ever worked with Verawood where I've had to glue it. I've used it on saw handles. There's no gluing. I don't know if I've ever made any boxes. If I have, I would have glued the end. Wow. I would think if I was going to make a chessboard, that'd be really interesting too, by the way, holly and Verawood, I would probably use a spline on all those joints just for that extra, in that case, I would use it for the extra glue surface of helping keeping everything together. I don't know. I mean, I've read lots about wiping it down with lacquer thinner, but you're only working the surface. That stuff will ooze out. So it's naturally oily, it's naturally oily. I don't know enough about using epoxy on it to say whether or not that would work. I'm not going to be much of a help for you in that one. Sorry. Next, Rick.
Next one from Joe Mahalik in Ohio.
Hey, Joe.
What wood combinations for small wood hinge boxes do you recommend? What thickness of S4S lumber should I purchase for making boxes? I understand I will have to cut the length in wood width.
Okay, there's multiple. My brain doesn't work that fast.
Just do the first part. What wood combinations for small wood hinge boxes do you recommend?
Well, I used to always want to. Do you want to go over it? Jake's unloaded. I always like to have contrast. It just makes a feature of the joint. So in this case, it's Gaboon ebony on the ends, bird's eye maple on the front and back. This one is mahogany and bird's eye maple. This one is tulip wood. It's been sitting around for probably 10 years or more, so it's lost a lot of its color, but that'll come back. So I always like contrast. However, you want a wood that is easy to process and glue for the dowel. So whatever the front, the back and the front are made out of, that's what your dowel is going to be made out of. So you want to make sure that that's not a oily wood, which would be difficult to make a dowel out of and would be even more difficult to glue. So I tend, if I were to pick one, I tend to make this stuff maple. When I do this, I mean front, top, back, dowel, maple. And then your expensive exotic woods are used for the much smaller pieces on the ends, and they give you lots of contrast. So that would answer that one. Now I've been making, I made a whole bunch of boxes recently, or over the last month, and I went a little bit out of my typical pattern, and I decided to make the box itself out of walnut, front, back, or ends and front, back, ends, and dowel. Lid is made out of bird's eye. So I like it because sometimes the contrast, maybe not so much on a little box, the contrast can kind of grow on you, not the right way. Whereas this is just end grain versus long grain. It's got enough contrast that you notice it. The lid is made out of a piece of bird's eye. And it's not hard. Walnut's a nice wood to make your dowel out of. Glues well. So, whatever you want. Next part of that question, Frick?
What thickness of, I don't know if this is a misprint or not, what thickness of S4S lumber should I put?
S4S means wood that has been surfaced on 4 sides. So front, top, bottom, and both edges.
Yeah, what thickness of S4S lumber should I purchase for making boxes?
Well, 4/4, which is 3/4, if you're getting it surfaced, would be enough. Any boxes that I do that are under the size of a jewelry box are going to be, all the dimensions are going to be less than 3/4 of an inch. You don't really gain anything by splitting a piece of wood in half unless it's a real small box. In other words, if I do a small box like that, I can take 2 sides out of one piece. But you're always asking for trouble when you open up, take one piece of wood and open it up to make 2 pieces. You disturb the force, and it may misbehave on you. So 4/4 lumber. Next, Frick?
Ralph Sutton is on too.
Oh, Ralph. When was Ralph here? In April or May?
He's here
May?
in Casper.
Was he? Howdy, Ralph.
September.
Wrap it up.
No,
No, he was earlier than that.
August. Because Luther wasn't here.
Howdy, Ralph. Good to see you.
And Sibby's on too.
Sibby's on? All the way over in Iceland. Our pilot friend. Good dovetails. Next, Frick?
We're done.
We're done?
Wrap it up.
So do we know how many prizes we're giving away?
No, because Luther won't get back to me.
Is Luther on? Is Super
Yes.
Dave on tonight?
Luther's on. Super Dave is not.
Oh, he's fired. We'll have to hire him again tomorrow, though.
I guess I'll ask one more question while I'm waiting for him.
Attaboy.
How do you handle knots when hand planing?
I just go right over him. If you sharpen your blade properly, follow 32 seconds of sharp, have us send you some good Shapton stones. You know, it's funny how that question comes up because frequently I will have done a video where I'm planing a board and there's knots in it, and you'll see the comments, oh, look at that, he went right over that knot as if it wasn't even there. Hey, it wasn't there. Your blade, I mean, yes, the wood around a knot is more dense than the surrounding, but if your blade is nice and sharp, you're just going to pass over that without even thinking about it. So it's all in the sharpness of your blade. Next, Rick? We don't know.
I don't know. He's in the chat, so I know he.
Was Gina on tonight?
I don't know if Gina can see it either.
Or
It doesn't go.
Luther-
It doesn't go through our website anymore, so Gina can't see it. Only Luther can.
So we should start having everybody harass Luther?
Wow!
What?
He just gave it to me. We're over 10,000.
Donations tonight?
I guess.
Or is that including...
No.
It couldn't
No,
because
that's
they're
no,
not done.
No, they're not done. 10,000 tonight. Holy cow! He says.
Wow.
All right, let's give away 10
You
prizes.
guys deserve a big high five. Thank you. That's going to $10,000 will pay for 1.5 vets. I think our latest calculation was it was just shy of $7,000. That is awesome. Thank you, people. I'll answer one more question just for that, Frick.
I closed them.
Oh,
It's gonna take us forever to draw 10 names. Just
make it up. Why does Rob's hair look better longer than Frick's hair looks
actually,
short?
I've gotten the opposite to that question quite a bit.
Yeah, what did you get?
I'm just kidding. I'm sure some people have mentioned it,
Oh,
as they do every
yes.
time.
Yes. Don't be jealous. So 10,000. We're giving away 10 prizes. That's going to take us a while. Well, Bentley.
Oh,
show 'em
actually,
I'll show him how you make a basket without actually putting it in the.
John Beck donated 10,000.
Oh, John did.
Yeah. So I'm sure it's a little bit more than that, but yeah, Luther just said 10K tonight. So I don't know if it's all John or John and some small donations, but thank you, John.
Yeah. John and I have been talking. Thank you, John. John's a Vietnam vet, so he not that other people don't, but John certainly gets it, and he was here to participate. Or he was here in the program himself. Howdy, boys. You come in to say hello?
Mike Cosman wants to know if that's a perm you have.
No, I had straight hair my entire life. I grow it out, and all of a sudden I got all these curls. So, no idea where that came from. What is the expression? Make your hair curl?
Yeah,
What is it?
it'll make your hair curl.
What?
No, it's make your toes curl.
Stress? Oh, yeah.
No.
I'm not under stress. So we're going to give away 10 prizes.
And as an update to the eBay auctions, the planer hasn't moved. It's at $45.50 still. The joiner's at $16.75 still, and the saw stop is now at $3,500.
Okay.
So 27 minutes, 12 minutes on the joiner, 27 minutes on the saw stop, and 42 minutes on the thickness planer. So get your bids in if you want them. Last chance.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give away, I'll do one at a time. Let's give away, first thing we're going to do is give away 3 dead cats. So Frick, if you want to start the draw.
Give me 1 second.
If you don't know what a dead cat is, do we have one around here? Hey, is there a dead cat over there, Annika, sitting on that? I thought there was a dead cat on that bench, on that couch. You guys should see that place out there. The minute we stop having classes, that becomes the big toy room. All the benches get shoved to one edge, and the kids out there, I have lots of grandchildren and children. So it takes us a week to clean it up in order to get ready for our class, which starts in April.
All right, we're ready.
Okay,
go.
so, well, wait, hold on just 1 second. Did you see it, Annika? No? Dead cat, and if those of you who don't know, is it's officially called a cozy fleece. And it's just a really, really light pullover, half zip. And it is the warmest. I can wear it outside with just a t-shirt down to minus 15 Celsius. If the wind's blowing, maybe not so, but minus 15 when it's calm out there, and that's all I need on.
Okay, it's going to Chris Radner in Orillia, Ontario.
Hey, Chris, you'll need it in Ontario.
Okay.
And see, we're just giving away prizes. He was behind you. Next.
Next one's going to Orest Hamilton, also in Canada.
Well, there's a Canadian conspiracy going on here. What's his name?
Orest.
Orest, and he's in where's
No,
he?
it just said on
Ontario?
no, it just said Canada. It didn't say.
Okay.
Oh my word!
Congratulations. What?
Next winner is Merlin Wenzel in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia.
Oh, really?
That's Gina's dad.
So Merlin Wenzel is Gina's father, and if you order anything, you know who Gina is. Gina works here; she'll be thrilled. Did she have anything to do with that? Did you put in the guy's name 10 times at the guest?
I
thing,
did,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Chad Green is his name. We'll see if he wins. Okay, next. This is number 4. What's the prize? Still?
Oh, let's give away. So here's a dead cat sweater. Only it's missing the Purple Heart logo.
Bring it over.
This is the old one. The new ones have the Purple Heart logo up on here, but it's called a cozy fleece. If you didn't get one and you want one, if you go to patsecretgarden.com, that's Moose's site that he and his wife run, you'll find it on there. The Purple Heart ones as well. So let's give away. Let's start with a Kevin Burris customized. Yeah, I'm going to do that one last. That'll be number 10.
Actually, we have 11 to give away.
11.
Yeah.
So Kevin Burris will customize you. I just can't oversell this. If you've got a slogan or a date and time that really means something, have it carved in stone. So we have our Purple Heart mission statement here. Over in our other shop, we have our business mission statement up. I have several slogans that mean something to us. Success is a progressive realization of a worthy ideal. We have that. We have several of them. So Kevin will do it for you. Who are we going to send it to?
It's going to Daniel Delott in Oregon, United States.
Daniel,
Yep.
Congratulations. Contact us. We'll put you in touch with Kevin so you can get it. He'll ship right from New York. Okay, next, let's give away one of Jeff's. Let's give away Jeff's. What's it called? Damascus. Let's give away Jeff's Damascus steel knife.
It's going to Tony Payne in Canberra, Australia.
Wow, all the way down in Australia. Congratulations, Tony. Okay, next, let's give away one of Kim O'Connor's custom handbags, and she will literally customize a handbag for you. This is an example. Who's it going to?
Sorry, children. It is going to
Come here.
Brian McDaniel in Gerald, Texas.
Brian, now, if Brian isn't looking for something, doesn't have a significant female in his life, and we'll give him the option of a shave bowl from Jeff, Kim's husband. So, next, you can't keep me on track on what number we're at.
That was number 5, I believe. 5 or 6.
No, the dead cats are separate.
Oh, geez.
So we gave away. What do we start with?
You get 3 dead cats.
No, but we don't count. We have to give away 11 big prizes. Dead
Okay,
cats don't count.
so that was number 2 then, I think.
So we did
Kevin Burris
Kevin's,
and then that one.
then we did okay. No, and we did 3. 3. Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
So let's go back another plaque from Kevin Burris.
That is going to Robin Powell in Gabriola, British Columbia.
Hey, Robin, congratulations.
Okay, next one.
Okay, next one. Let's give away. Jeff O'Connor shave bowl and brush. and we'll give them the option of having a purse if it's a female or if it's somebody that wants that. So
It is Stacy Clinton in, what's MS?
Missouri.
Yeah.
No, Missouri's MO. MS is Mississippi. Okay, Stacy, congratulations. The next one we're giving away is Kim. So let's give away, again, let's go either give away a Kim purse or a Jeff knife. So either a custom handbag or a Jeff O'Connor.
It's going to Cyril Lynch in United Kingdom.
Wow, that's 2 knives going, possibly 2 knives or a handbag going over to the UK. Congratulations, Cyril. Somebody counting? I can't do this and that. What are we on, Ken?
We're on number 7 coming up.
Yeah?
With the dead cats or without?
Without.
Okay.
Okay. This is
So
number 7.
we're back to Kevin. Another plaque. I wish I had another example of a plaque. Oh yeah, I do. I have one right here. So this is a Canadian warship. That Kevin did. And that comes with you can't see them, but there's a stands, or he'll drill them out for you and so that you can mount them on the wall. Okay, where's that going, Frick?
Let's see. That is going to Richard Anderson in the United States.
Hey, Richard, congratulations. Okay, now we're back to Jeff. Yep.
That one is going to...
Shave bowl and set. A shave bowl and brush.
That one's going to Tommy Roberts in Oklahoma.
Tommy in Oklahoma. Congratulations. Now we're going to give away another handbag, custom handbag by Kim O'Connor, which is snippetsandstitches.com. And that's going to
Mark Corso in Plant City, Florida.
Mark in Florida. Congratulations. Now, if you're not into that, or you don't want that prize for your wife, you have the option of a shave bowl or a Damascus knife from Jeff. What's that number?
That was 8, yeah.
So we're doing 9 now. So number 9 will be a Damascus steel knife from Jeff O'Connor, O'Connor Woodworks.
It's going to Andrew Patterson in New York.
Andrew in New York. It might be an illegal weapon in New York. I don't know.
Nothing's illegal.
That's short blade. That's number 8. Now we're doing number 9.
That was number 9.
That was number 9. So now we're doing number 10. So we're back to Kevin. Oh, yeah. Kevin Burris, and then number 11 will be the handbag. So another plaque. Remember, you can get it either on granite or on slate.
Larry McDaniel in Canute, Oklahoma.
Hey, Larry, congratulations. Contact us. We'll put you in touch with Jeff, or with Kevin. So this is made in Maine, and it's all made entirely by hand. And he's a combat wounded vet. He donated this out of the blue.
Hand stitched.
Hand stitched, yeah, the whole bit. Really cool. Who's it going to go to? This is our grand prize of the night. This would have a value of a lot. I know that's not a very definite price, but I'd be the last one that could give you a good price on something made out of leather.
All right, here we go.
Drum roll.
Winner is Jay Schmidt in Minnesota.
Jay in Minnesota. Congratulations, brother. You own a nice piece of cowhide. Contact us, support at RobCosman.com. Give Gene all your details, and we'll get that shipped out to you. That wraps us up. Ooh, we are overtime. Okay, thank you for your support. Really appreciate this. We're happy to do it. We love what we do with the vets, and we are happy that you see and recognize the importance and support us. So big kudos to you. Are we on in 2 weeks, Frick?
I don't see why not.
No conflict with you and your dancings?
DJing.
DJing?
I don't dance.
I don't dance. Annika, you want to say goodnight?
Good night.
They can't hear you. You don't have a mic on. Come here, Mickey. Cooper. Hurry. quick. I had to put you up here to the camera, and you have to tell all these people. Tell them thank you for supporting us.
Thank you for
Up there, up there. Thank you for supporting us. Say Purple Heart means a lot.
Purple Heart means a lot.
See you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.
Good job.
Yeah.
And Kubi's gonna have a little brother in the next couple
Oh,
days.
that's right too. My wife, my daughter Erica is very pregnant.
Due dates tomorrow.
Her duty's tomorrow.
Officially, yeah.
You're gonna have a little brother,
What's one more?
Royce. All right, Frank, do your music thing.
All right. See you later.
See ya.